thank you everybody for coming over here to hear us out. And thank you Eden Center so much for giving me this opportunity to produce this research. So I'll dive straight into it because we just have 10 minutes. So this is all about understanding student experiences off campus. What I really mean by off campus is, the slides aren't moving. Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, so what I mean by off-campus experiences are any experience that takes place outside the traditional teaching learning setup. So these are primarily LSE organized. So these could be anything from an educational walk to a trip to Cumberland Lodge to even an exchange program. So my objective was to understand the impact that such experiences have on student motivation and learning, and how these affect the social interaction and social dynamics, as well as how they affect personal development and professional development for students, along with studying the impact that pandemic had on such experiences. So we'll be starting with my findings and the impact that such experiences have had, challenges as well as recommendations. The methods that I used were qualitative in nature, so they were semi-structured interviews, open-ended, and I've had 10 research participants, so 4 of them were postgrads, the rest of them were undergrads, and 4 of them were exchange students, and the rest of them had other experiences. And the interviews were very reflective in nature, so it started from a general recall of what they thought and what they felt about the experience to specific questions that I had to ask them. And it focused on their feelings, the challenges, learnings, and all of this. So coming to the findings section. So what I found about how these impact learning is a lot of students, in fact 4 out of 10 participants, spoke about the competitive environment that LSE brings about. And getting them off campus sort of reduced pressure, encouraged them to talk, and encouraged them to participate more with their peers as well as with the teachers. So all these, most of these experiences that I've studied also involved some professors, some peers, except for exchange programs which could not involve professors, but then they involved professors who were in the university where they went. So the outcome was that it made learning more interactive and engaging. Just as an example, one of the participants mentioned how she was a student of anthropology, and she said it's really difficult to understand culture from textbooks and from lectures, but when you actually go to places like maybe such as a museum and you actually see how things, you look at the images and you can understand a little more about an abstract concept like that. Just to illustrate that, this is a report by one of the participants. He was a law student. He went for a legal London walk organized by LSE. And he talks about how, when you actually visit places that you read about in books, then theory really becomes more, you can see it, and it helps to take an abstract concept and put that into reality. So that is what, which is very helpful for students to, otherwise it becomes very vague and fuzzy, but you can actually put images and you can actually see how they benefit them. Then talking about the impact that such experiences had on social dynamics. So initially, a lot of participants spoke about the difficulties that they had in terms of social interactions in the beginning of the Lent term, given that there was COVID and there was hybrid learning and they had separate impacts. So the impact that COVID had was a lot of people stopped using social skills for a while. So it took them some time to get used to it. So for participant 8, such an experience was a confidence builder. And especially in terms of hybrid learning, a lot of participants said because we don't see our teachers every day, because we don't meet our peers on a daily basis, such experiences kind of help them bring it together. So there are icebreaker activities that have taken place, and also there are like Cumberland Lodge activities. So the ones that involved a longer duration, and we'll talk more about this later, they were the ones that actually helped students build friendship and go beyond just meeting each other and saying hi to each other, which is what happened in classrooms. They also facilitated professor-student interaction. So students have expressed a willingness to interact more with their professors. And they want to know them as people, they want to learn from them and their experiences. And that's a motivating factor when it comes to students. After such experiences, students reported that the professors were more approachable. And it sort of helped to blur hierarchies, because right now they're students and they're doctorates, and there's a big gap, and it sort of helps to blur such lines. So this is how off-campus experiences had an impact on social development. When we talk about professional development, LSE students at LSE are very career-oriented. From what I've realized, almost everybody spoke about, oh, how this would help me in my life, how this would help me in career. So such an experience helps them get an exposure to an actual real-life setting. So somebody who did an internship spoke about how it helped them to choose the career that they didn't want, which is, I think, also very important. So, and also it gave him exposure to how hybrid work goes about, which is something that a lot of people don't have. So, yeah. And even with Cumberland Lodge, like such experiences sort of help them decide whether they wanted to pursue a career in research and gain experience to actual life settings. If there are experiences that can help students shadow professionals, it can really help them. And a lot of times, it also helps to bust myths related to the profession. So again, this is about the account of the law student who thinks that the barrister's profession in the UK is very exclusive. And before the experience, he didn't even know that he could enter such places. But after the experience, he spoke about how he doesn't feel it as intimidating as he initially thought. So when it comes to exchange programs, and they've had a different impact than a regular off-campus experiences because of the larger duration. Apart from the other benefits that students get from cultural benefits and learning and meeting new people, they also get exposed to different academic styles. Like a student in economics, student of economics, who studied in LSE, said that in Berkeley it was taught completely by programming than by theories. And they also got more subject choices, which helped them, in their professional development, and also help them sort of learn more perspectives intellectually than they had before. So they spoke about how LSE courses are very theory heavy. Almost 3 out of 4 participants spoke about how theory heavy they are and not as practical as the ones they are. They also spoke about how student-teacher rapport differs. So when it comes to 2 of them went to France and the other 2 went to the States, to the US. Those who went to France spoke about how LSE teachers were more approachable, they had office hours and they could reach them. But the ones who went to the US spoke about how the professors over there were more approachable. So that's something that's mentioned in more details in the report. And all of them spoke about how they were more engaged in academics at the exchange than at LSE. For a lot of them, it brought love for learning back, which they thought they had somewhere lost in the system, in the competition. And a lot of them helped, the experience also helped them gain important life skills like managing finances and being an adult. For the participants, it also helped them gain a different perspective on Brexit after living in France than they had in the UK. Okay, so there were also certain challenges related to the experiences, and as we will see, experiences need to be well curated in order to implement it well enough. So there were certain general challenges relating to the experiences being really short, there being not so many experts, and they not having been advertised well enough. And the ones related to exchange program have their specific challenges related to visas and procedures and all of that. And a lot of students spoke about how they were a barrier in their entire experience. I have also listed more details about this in the report. And when it comes to COVID as a threat, initially it was a threat when it came to Migration, and everybody was bothered about it. But in the long term, people reported that COVID is no longer an obstacle. So coming to the recommendations, this is just based on the research that I created. The impact of change sort of increases as you go from the bottom of the funnel to the top of the funnel, from just a social that departments are there to exchange programs. The entire point of this is that we should be focusing on the more higher quality experiences, and how to curate them is the objective that you really want. So if you want to make a change in a student's personality or their attitude, or if you really want to gain them, help them gain something like a life skill, maybe you should be going for an exchange program. However, if you want, if you want an icebreaker activity, maybe a social would be better. So it's very important to think about the objective that you want and accordingly design the kind of program and choose the one that you would really like. And students really want experiences from which they can learn something, especially professionally. So they want more experts, maybe even more alumni, and they want better communication. So there are recommendations which I have listed in the report, specifically for the departments, how they should be organizing socials, when should they be organizing it, and preferably in the beginning of the year when most people still haven't made friends. That's when they really help. And LSE also gives seminar leaders freedom to hold seminars off campus. So that's the least that we can do from departments to seminar leaders. And for LSE as an institution, we need to have more policies that encourage off-campus experiences. So we have this program called Go LSE for Exchange this year, but I think we need to build on that. And there's also the LSE Futures program. So so this is a student who is talking about how LSE should provide more opportunities, and they're like, they didn't even have a program, but now they have. So I know things are going in the right direction, but I wish they were more broader, the opportunities when I was there. So this is something that has implications. There is the LSE Futures Initiative. It has 6 themes. One of them is learning off campus. So that means LSE does recognize that learning off campus is very, very important. And you have, like, most of the challenges that people listed were related to organization, coordination, the exchange programs not being well thought of. My suggestion over here would be to create this body called LSE off-campus events, which would be dedicated to streamline all such events, including the exchange programs as well as local events, given the importance that they have, and sort of think about how to do the experiences and when to do them, based on the research and the timing and the duration and everything. Only when these experiences are well thought of are they're more likely to be effective. Otherwise, it would be like very time-consuming, very costly, and not helping anybody. So this is what the suggestion is. And talking about the future of learning, there's digital disruption in all industries, especially educational. The future of learning seems to be forced out of classrooms. I don't know if it's off campus or is it online. It's really complex to answer that question, but it seems to be more decentralized. And according to the WEF, we need to have technology, but we also need to leverage social interactions with peers and professors, especially in a hybrid setting. So I think off-campus experiences need to be prioritized a little bit more and organized better, and need to be well thought of here. So more in the report, and sorry about rushing. I had only 10 minutes and a lot to say, but thank you so much for hearing me out.